Well, hello, my name is Jim Royal. I'm a huge Beatles and Elvis Presley fan and basically classic rock in general. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. If you could do a thumbs up, that's always most appreciated. And feel free to leave comments. I always enjoy reading them and I do my very best to try to respond in a timely manner. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about a cartoon that came out in the 1960s. And it is about the Beatles. It was called The Beatles television animated series. It came out originally September of 1965 and it lasted through April of 1969. It had 39 episodes. They were 30 minutes long, maybe 22 minutes with cartoons, but anyway, and it was a fun cartoon. It was a King Features production. Al Brodix was the executive producer. He would later go on to do the Yellow Submarine animated film for the Beatles that was released in '69. But this was the first one, and apparently what happened is he had seen them on Ed Sullivan show, and after that he said this would be really a good idea for for a cartoon, and he contacted the Beatle management, and they gave the okay. Each episode features Beatle music, which is cool, and what it does is it is very zany, like A Hard Day's Night and Help, where they're running around being chased by girls. They are dressed in their mop top look throughout the whole series, even though the show would continue going on. It featured music right from the beginning with the Beatles, and it went up through Revolver. And then in fact it even featured two songs from '67, their first single, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. The Beatles were not involved in the voice acting at all on this. They had voice actors. Paul Frees did John and George, and for some reason George sort of had an Irish accent. Paul Frees was known for doing the voice of Boris from The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, among much more than that. He also, if you know the Rankin Bass, claymation, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman, he did some voices in those shows too. He was very big on old-time radio, and he was a television star and movie star also. He did a lot of work. And then the other actor, voice actor, was Lance Percival, and he did Paul and Ringo. And he, let's see, he did, I'm not as familiar with his work, but I know that he did, he did a lot of acting as well. All right, so let me show you them. You can get a better, I'm going to try to avoid the glare, I apologize. All right. So that looks pretty good. So here's John, and there is Paul, that's George, and then poor Ringo, look at him. Okay, all right. So, these were kind of exaggerated, of them. John was considered the smart one, and he had shorter hair. He was the leader of the group. He was very witty, good sarcasm. He liked to play jokes, but he didn't take himself too seriously. And then you had Paul, and he was, the second one in the group, and very polished, and also funny in his own right. You had George, who also was comical, and he had a little bit longer hair. And then I said poor Ringo because Ringo has like hair in his eyes, real long hair, and he's got a big nose, and he was the butt of a lot of the jokes, and just kind of silly. So the show, basically what it would do, like the first episode I caught the other day was called A Hard Day's Night. So A Hard Day's Night, you see the Beatles in Transylvania, and they need to do their band practice, so they're in this old castle, and it happens to be haunted. And they conjure up the spirits, There's witches and Frankenstein's monster and vampires, and everybody, and they're being chased through the rooms, you know, like the monkeys too. Everything you'd expect from A Hard Day's Night. And, you know, right when they start playing. And then, you know, one of the people there, it was a woman, she says, you know, well, you know, we really like the music. We haven't heard music played in this castle in over 200 years. So then they continue with A Hard Day's Night, and they're playing that. And then there's like this little, after that short ended, then they often in this series, they would have one of the Beatles come out and introduce like the sing-along segment. So they would be out their little stage, and then Ringo would come out, and Ringo would be the prop man. And, you know, the person, sometimes it was Paul, sometimes it was John. It was like, hey, what are you doing here? And, oh, well, the prop man's not here, so I'm, you know, helping him out, you know. And, you know, it was just silly stuff. Well, there was one where he was dressed like Cupid, and he was hanging, and, you know, he fell and stuff. I mean, it's just silly stuff. And then the sing-along segments featured, you know, the words to the Beatles songs, and they would be still frames of the cartoon. And then I remember the next one was inside that first episode. So what they did Not a Second Time and Devil in Our Heart that way. And then the next one was I Want to Hold Your Hand, which is cute, right? So the short was the Beatles are on a ship somewhere in the ocean, and a scientist is also on there, and he had caught an octopus. The Beatles go on into the ocean, and they're swimming, and, you know, they've got their little you know, mask on, helmet, and they're in the ocean, and they happen to come across another octopus who is lovesick. And, you know, it's just, I want to hold your hand, you know. It was just cute. She's got all of them, and they're swimming around and stuff. So finally at the end they realized what was happened, that the octopus on the boat was, you know, lovesick and missed the other octopus. So the Beatles have this big wad of cash, and they pay the scientist, and then they release the octopus back into the ocean. So that's how that was. It was funny, right? Anyway, it was a fun show. I caught it. For me, my history is when I was a boy, I watched it in reruns. Not only did I hear them, you know, on the radio in my parents' car on FM radio when I was growing up after the Beatles had broken up, but then I would come home after school, and this further got me into them. And I remember I would do drawings and stuff for the Beatles, and this really helped me, you know, just get more and more into the Beatles. And that's what was really good about the cartoon, is just the idea that, you know, weekly it was in people's households on television, and it was just really good. John Lennon was quoted. At the time, the Beatles were not really too impressed with the cartoon. You know, the script writing could have been, you know, the critics say this could have been a little bit better. But John Lennon was quoted as later saying in 1972 that he really appreciated it. He thought it was funny, and it was good to watch. He got a kick out of it. And then George Harrison in the late 70s said the same thing. So anyway, that's my thing on this one. I wanted to wish you a very happy Memorial Day if you celebrate it. And I wanted just to say thank you always for watching, you know, my videos, and I try to have content on here that sometimes is a little different, or maybe you're not as familiar with. I really wish they would release this through Apple and officially, you know, through the Beatles, but they haven't yet. But who knows? Hopefully someday they will. Take care. Bye.